Tamatha Paul.
Tēnā koe te māngai. My question is to the Minister of Housing and it asks, will the government's decision to increase rents for public housing tenants by 20% worsen or alleviate the cost of living for low-income public housing tenants?
Mr Speaker, the government's fixing the social housing system to make support fairer, go further and be more targeted to those who need it most for the time they need it. I acknowledge these changes are not easy and are not supported by everyone, but tough decisions are required. We are aiming to reduce the cliff between the cost of social and private housing. That's why we've also increased the accommodation supplement weekly payment by $10 to $30 per week, which will support low to moderate income households. Many of those households are in severe or pay a lot in weekly take-home pay when it comes to rent.
Does he understand that the fairness argument is based on equal assistance to those in equal need? And if so, does he understand that those in public housing have greater needs on various metrics compared to those living in private rental housing?
That is true in some circumstances, and it is true that people in social housing have greater need, and part of the problem with the system at the moment is that those who are in greater need do not receive that support because they are on a wait list waiting for public housing, while people who do not necessarily need that support are in the social housing that could be taken up by the person in greater need. The member has actually neatly highlighted precisely the government's reform objective, which is that the system should be targeted at those in the greatest need, with people with disabilities, people with addiction support requirements, people with mental health challenges, people who are victims of family violence, for example, people who have formerly left prison who are currently languishing on the wait list. Those are the people most in need, and we're going through a pretty robust exercise and working with the Social Investment Agency and using the data we've got to make sure we focus support on those in need. But in relation to the member's point around equality, I'll just read this out to her.
Well, it's a very long answer.
Well, it's a very important issue, sir, because
it is, but
there can be.
So it's question time.
Well, a sole parent beneficiary with one child in Rotorua in social housing pays $163 per week. The same person, not in social housing, the same person in private housing relying on the accommodation supplement pays $345 a week in rent, and they're in the same circumstance. That doesn't seem fair to me.
Yeah, exactly. Does he accept that the length of time that people spend on the wait list has been prolonged because he chose to cancel thousands of public homes?
Well, both points are wrong. Firstly, the number of people on the wait list has actually decreased by 6,000 under this government. And secondly, you can't cancel projects for which there is no funding available. And the last government might have promised, or at least pretended, that there would be thousands of homes built, but they've attached no funding to them.
Yes. Supplementary question.
What does the Minister think of the idea of public housing tenants lowering their rents with the cost savings from defunding the police?
Let's look. Let that fly.
Sorry, got a serious question. How, if at all, will he ensure that the $373 million that is being taken from public housing tenants' rents to increase the accommodation supplement won't be immediately captured by landlords increasing their rents?
Mr Speaker, I'm pleased the member asked that question because in 2018 the previous government increased the accommodation supplement as part of their families package, and then they commissioned some report by Motu Economic Research, which was a very comprehensive report, and in fact so comprehensive the Minister of Social Development at the time lauded the report and noted its findings that the vast bulk of increases in the accommodation supplement flow to renters, not to landlords. That is what the economic evidence supports, because the accommodation supplement by design is essentially an income support mechanism that flows to renters. I note the opposition seems to have changed its perspective and is now describing the accommodation supplement as a subsidy for landlords. So apparently it's a good thing when Labor puts up the accommodation supplement, but when the national government, which is actually supporting low to middle income working New Zealanders, does it, it's apparently a terrible thing. I invite members of the House to reflect on that comparison.